Micheal Walsh is my name. I'm a Garda Sergeant based in Mill Street Garda Station in Galway City, and obviously I'm attached to the Galway branch. It was a night that I'll never forget. The Sunday, if I remember correctly, New Year's Eve was a Sunday. I was working the late shift, which was 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. It had been quite enough evening, in fairness. And just as we're kind of the changeover shift at 11 p.m, word came in, or a call came in, that there was a car fire on the west side of the Galway City, and that the fire brigade were there, and that there was a body in the car. Liaising with the sergeant from the night unit, I said, look, I'll stay on for a while just to give them a bit of assistance. So I suppose from the outset, this is their story. I don't take credit as this being my particular story. It's a story of unity in Galway on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day morning. I suppose as stories go, this is probably just one story of so many stories that our members around the country could tell us. After 11 p.m, we went out to the scene. There was 3 units of Galway Fire Brigade there putting a car fire out. The car was in the middle of a green area, so it was a bit suspicious, I suppose, to start with. It wasn't like a car that was parked in a normal parking position. You know, straight away we were unsure, is it a murder? Is it a suicide? Is it a stolen car? You know, you're trying to put the pieces together. You have the fire brigade there, I suppose, doing their business, trying to put the fire out. Initially you're looking at, you know, quite horrific scenes of a fairly burnt body sitting in the seat of a car. Your policing, I suppose, brain kicks in. You know, what are we looking at here? Do we need to preserve scenes? Do we need to look for witnesses? Is it suspicious? Is there a suspect? You know, was this car set alight? Was it petrol bombed? Was the person in this car murdered and then the car set alight by an offender? You have, I suppose, onlookers watching. You're concerned for their safety. Is there, you know, suspects in the crowd? You're going around trying to gather as much information as you can. You're considering, I suppose, all the things we do, notifying senior management and so on. So there's a lot to deal with. You're calling in as much resources as you can, Garda resources, and I suppose it's the same across every division in the country. We're short-staffed, you know, and we don't have enough guards to deal with the stuff that we deal on a daily basis. So you're trying to deal with all of that with limited manpower. I'm conscious of it's a fairly horrific scene, you know, a body burnt in a car. I can still visualise it, you know, and I've 25 years service in Garda Síochána. I've seen lots of dead bodies, but this one specifically stands out as quite horrific. The body is still, I mean, graphic, is still cooking. It's a fairly eerie scene. There's a smell of petrol at the scene, so you're kind of suspecting there was some petrol used to maybe set the car alight. I'm conscious of, as I said, the young members. It's probably their first time in a lot of cases. I know there was at least 2 probationary Gardaí there who were no more than 10 weeks in on Garda Síochána. It's probably the first dead body they've seen. And for me, with somebody with 25 years service, I suppose affected by what I'd seen, I can only imagine what they went through. I was joined by another colleague, another sergeant, who I suppose we're trying to delegate maybe the work we need to do. We find out kind of from onlookers that potentially the person in this car is from the area, and that this person had sent emails and messages on Facebook about taking his own life. And this, I suppose, just you know, came to light maybe half an hour or something after we arrived at the scene. So we're talking about informing, or at least speaking to next of kin. So I know one of the probationers of my unit was with, as I said, 10-year service or 10-week service, went with this other sergeant to, I suppose, potentially break the bad news. And speaking to him afterwards, he said he had never witnessed anything like that in his life. The screams from the, I wasn't there to witness it, but I mean, he was traumatized from just breaking the bad news. His girlfriend, the victim's girlfriend, was in the house along with his parents, and they had to break the bad news. We had no sooner kind of finished with that particular incident, and we had a scene and everything, and there was guards left minding the scene. Then another call came in about another dead body where a man potentially had fell and banged his head. So straight from that up to this next one at the side of a house where a man had fallen over and banged his head. Again, it looked like an accidental fall, but every case has to be, I suppose, individually investigated and all of the facts brought to the fore. Shortly after that, there was a call about a man had attempted to hang himself in his house, and we'd sent a unit to that. I didn't get to that particular incident myself. Short time later, there was another call about a man had tried to hang himself down near the train line in Galway City, and that the railway staff had come across him trying to, set up a rope from a bridge. And when he saw them, he made good his escape. He got on a bike and left the scene. But obviously, we were left with the scenario where we have potentially a suicide victim or somebody who's of mental health, who has mental health issues, trying to track them down. And thankfully we did. And then I suppose a big issue that I know we have in Galway and probably other parts of the country is trying to get a doctor on nights. And I'm conscious it's New Year's Eve, everybody wants to be off and enjoy themselves, but on any given night in Galway City we have the stresses of not being able to get a doctor, especially for the likes of mental ill prisoners. And we ended up having to go to the hospital. So this gentleman was brought to the hospital, so we ended up with, again, a limited number of Gardaí sitting in the hospital until this man can be assessed by doctors. And I'm sure if you look at the media in any given day, any hospital, but particularly UCHD, is very busy. A&E, there's queues out the door. Shortly after that, there was a call about a girl had taken her own life, or potentially taken her own life at a house party. This was about 4 or 5 in the morning. Gardaí went to the scene. At this stage, nobody had even got a break. We're going potentially I've gone since 3 p.m, but from the crew that started at 11 p.m, this is 4 a.m, nobody had got a break. They go over to a house party where there'd been a group of people at a New Year's Eve house party, and they had apparently taken a couple of lines of coke, and she went upstairs, and after maybe an hour, people kind of noticed that she had gone missing. Lovely girl in her 20s, and they went upstairs and found that she'd hung herself off the wardrobe. Gardaí arrived at the scene, took the girl down, began to perform CPR. Ambulance was called. Ambulance put her onto life support systems, and the Gardaí assisted in escorting the ambulance to the hospital. At this stage, I happened to be at the A&E from the previous chap. Saw the girl being wheeled in, and her friends, obviously in a very hysterical state, alongside. Anybody that's, within an Garda Síochána that have daughters themselves can kind of associate when you see such a waste of life being wheeled past you. And this poor girl sadly died. While I was there, a couple come up to me and says, guard, there's a man down the bridge, on the side of the bridge, going to jump in. So I'm dealing with the man that had tried to hang himself, waiting for a doctor, watching this waste of life, and I mean that in the best intentions to the poor girl, but being wheeled by me, and now left with no resources to go to potentially a man jumping into the river. I left the hospital, checked all the bridges, and thankfully I didn't find anybody, but it didn't mean that there wasn't somebody after jumping into the river. So that's a kind of I suppose, an introduction to the night we had. It was just one after another. I think when I finished that night, the unit were there. They were starstruck. They didn't know what to say. They were just like rabbits in the headlights. They didn't know what had actually happened. As I said, you had both young members, you had experienced members who were just traumatized by what they'd witnessed on one night. I spoke at our AGM, Agassiz AGM in Galway, and I suppose that's one of the reasons I've been called here today to speak on it. The first thing I said is Garda Síochána has made great progress in the last number of years, and I acknowledge that regarding welfare. We have our peer support, we have the free phone number where we can call welfare support. But the point I made at the AGM was, it's like an alcoholic telling him, you have a problem, ring AA. They're not going to do it. I was very conscious of, I was obviously a different unit to the units who were affected by this. I was back in the next day at 12 noon. So I went home for 3 or 4 hours sleep. I'm back in at 12 noon to work the late shift on New Year's Day. I was conscious that the same night units were coming in at 9 p.m. that night, and I wanted to have someone there to at least acknowledge what they've went through. Our welfare officer for the Western region is on maternity leave, So I was kind of aware she wasn't there. I emailed the welfare office in Dublin. I'm aware it's New Year's Day. There's going to be, I'm not expecting a response email. I emailed Garda Management, kind of highlighting that, look, this is a case where I think welfare should be used. And look, we did get welfare, but at our AGM, I was saying we need to get immediate welfare, a service that can come, and we have a motion to conference this year that there is a service that will come to the Garda station to provide a hot debrief to the unit in an instance like that. The analogy I made at the AGM was, if we have a prisoner in who doesn't speak English, we have a free phone number there where we can get an interpreter to the Garda station, usually within an hour or two, to deal with interpretation issues. As supervisors, we have a duty of care to our members. I can still visualise the faces of those Gardaí with 10-week service and only imagine what they've gone through. And I, as a supervisor, have a duty of care to them. I was trying to get some service, some welfare, some professional who could at 9 o'clock sit in front of them and say, folks, what you went through last night was surreal. It's not normal. And this is how you should feel, and this is the effects of what you went through or how it may affect you. I have no training in welfare. Obviously, I couldn't get that service. I didn't get that service from that night at 9 p.m. I suppose traditionally we would have gone for a pint or gone for something, and we would have discussed it a lot amongst ourselves. On the night, I was hoping to maybe even have a cup of tea and a box of biscuits at 9 o'clock so the lads could sit for an hour and have a chat about it. And my units were staying till 10 o'clock, of course, and they could cover the jobs for an hour. But I had a family in to me at 6 p.m. where their son was gone missing. And I'm thinking, here's the guy that was on the bridge last night. Obviously, I couldn't tell them that, but I'm dealing with potentially a missing person who had gone missing from the night before. Very suspicious. So at 9 p.m., I have family there, and I'm coordinating searches and so on. So I didn't really get much of an opportunity to go in to speak to the unit. I did say to the sergeant, come on, will you give me 5 minutes? I need to talk to your guys. So I took 5 minutes, I went into the parade, and like I said to you here tonight, I said to them, folks, I've acknowledged what you've gone through last night. I've been there myself. I said, I've 25 years service, and I've never witnessed a night like that. I said, I have sought counselling, or I sought welfare on your behalf, and I know we will get it. I would have liked if we had something here tonight, because we all go home to our families, we all have or may have children, and it does affect us. It was mentioned at the AGM in Galway about people turning to alcohol or other things to, I suppose, find escapism. That week I did admit I drank a couple of extra bottles of wine that I wouldn't generally have done so. I found great support from my wife. She works as a crime analyst, so she's familiar, I suppose, with Garda Speak and the work that we do. So it's good to have a shoulder at home to speak to. I think we're in an era where welfare, the whole area of mindfulness, awareness of stress and things like that are to the fore. We're not afraid to speak about it, but we do need those services, and I think we need them sooner rather than later. Yes, we did get welfare service maybe 5 or 6 weeks after the event, and it was brilliant. It absolutely was brilliant, and I want to commend the welfare service in Dublin. I think Claire Malone, from the top of my head is her name, the sergeant there herself, and she bought a counsellor from Dublin Fire Brigade. And I think all of the people who went to that welfare were highly complimentary of it. But I would like if that service was available, or at least something for a hot debrief, as I say, at the Garda station, post an event. Like, we did get the welfare, not everybody attended it. I think there needs to be nearly a more enforced option there. Nobody will dispute what the unit went through on the night was traumatic. Nobody can dispute that. And if something is that traumatic, and it's not that any particular incident was overly traumatic, we deal with them on a daily basis. I think it was the sheer number of them. Potentially there was 5 or 6 dead bodies one night. It was just call after call, limited resources, lack of doctors. It's the combination of all that that stressed stressed everybody. So I think we do need something that, a service that can come in and speak to people. They don't have to listen, but when it's put in front of them, they will use it. There is people who are still, people who can deal with it themselves, and there are people like that, and that's great. There are people who can't. There are people who feel they don't need welfare, but maybe after doing kind of realise, actually, you know what, that was good. Like, I had sleepless nights following that night. You'd be at home, you close your eyes, you think of a loved one who may have passed away in the past when you're thinking about dead bodies. Think of my daughter who's asleep downstairs in bed and say, what's ahead of me when she reaches her 20s? You know, could I get a phone call some night where she's going to have taken an overdose or try to hang herself or whatever? I suppose it shows how fickle life can be. And the job that we do in the Garda Síochána, we deal with human life on a daily and nightly basis. But at the end of the day, we are human beings too. And it does take its toll on us. And we shouldn't be afraid to reach out and avail of those. There are excellent services. We don't avail of them enough. And that's why I think we need to present them to members more, so that they kind of have no choice but to sit and listen. I mean, there's been important issues in the past. Pain conditions are important. But your well-being, I think, is more important, because your well-being is something that's important 24 hours a day, where our work is only for a number of hours a day. Our well-being and how we take care of ourselves in our 30 plus years of service will stand to us after we retire. It will have a direct effect, I suppose, on our longevity of, how long we're potentially going to live. It has a direct effect on our family. If I go home from work stressed, I'm going to take it out on somebody, my children, my wife, whatever it might be. So it's huge effects, and I'm delighted to hear that it's a team at this year's conference.